Throughout the centuries there have been very few pieces of clothing or jewellery which have survived that belonged to Queen Elizabeth I. The last Tudor monarch is considered a woman who was one of the greatest to reign over England, but in the last few years a piece of clothing did emerge that allegedly belonged to Elizabeth I. The Barton Altar Cloth is considered the only surviving dress of the Queen, and for years it had survived as a sacred object in the church, before it was recognised as a costume and piece of clothing that belonged to Elizabeth. But one of the only surviving pieces of jewellery belonging to Elizabeth I is a ring, which includes a locket with a portrait of Elizabeth and another woman who may have been believed is her mother, Anne Boleyn, the executed second wife of Henry VIII. This ring is known as the Chequers ring, and it was crafted and created with mother of pearl, gold, rubies and diamonds, that following her death in 1603, this ring was then removed from the Queen's body. Elizabeth died with this ring on her finger, and it's believed that it was made around 1570 and was kept at some time at Chequers, where the Prime Minister's country home was. Specifically, a mother-of-pearl hoop is mounted with a sheet of gold set with cut rubies found on the sides of the bezel and also the shoulders. White diamonds form the letter E for Elizabeth, and there are blue enamel letters with R for Regina, meaning Queen. But the rubies surround the letters along a pearl, and, as mentioned, there is a locket on the ring. The image of Elizabeth is in this, in an older one. And there is also a portrait of a younger woman, dating from around 1535, but this ring for Elizabeth was incredibly important to her, and it was as important to her as the coronation ring, which was said to have been cut from her finger around the time when she died. The coronation ring, as it was said, had grown into her flesh, as she never removed it once during the 45 years she reigned over England. But during the week of her death, the doctor said it should be removed, and then the Queen died shortly after it was cut. But the ring had a huge amount of significance for Elizabeth, and with this, historians have debated for years who the other figure in the ring is. The phoenix on the back of the ring was a reference to the Seymour family. Many think that the ring was given to her from this noble family, but the phoenix itself was a symbol of the Queen, and she liked these herself, likening her rise as queen, almost like a phoenix rising out of the ashes. But the woman for centuries in the ring has been debated, and one key suspect for this was Anne Boleyn, the mother of Elizabeth, who was executed within the walls of the Tower of London. The woman in the ring is wearing a French hood, along with all the jewellery that it's believed that Anne wore. But the woman in this image has light hair, and it's believed that Anne had dark brunette hair. But the ageing of the ring over the centuries may have altered the colour of the hair of the woman in the other part of the locket. It's also interesting to consider who this woman could be. Who else was as close to Elizabeth? She would, throughout her time as queen, never speak publicly of her mother, but she would, throughout her reign, bestow gifts on the descendants of the Boleyns. Some historians have claimed that this woman in the ring could in fact be Catherine Parr, the sixth wife of Henry VIII and the stepmother of Elizabeth, who had a role in her upbringing. Catherine helped to educate Elizabeth and had red hair, which would match the woman who was inside of the ring. But also the marriage she had with Thomas Seymour could all explain the use of the phoenix emblem on the ring. But the ring's secret portrait would allude to the fact that it could be Anne, as Elizabeth had no reason nor need to hide the affection she had for Catherine Parr. But if it was in fact Anne, her mother, who was inside of the locket ring, for her eyes only, then it would have been the perfect and discreet way of honouring a woman whose memory is linked to her losing her head inside of the Tower of London. There is also the possibility of the other woman in the ring being Elizabeth I when she was younger herself. However, it still is yet to have been confirmed. But following her death, the Queen's jewellery collection was then dispersed by James I, her successor, and James's queen, Anne of Denmark, With this, pieces of jewellery were remade into things, and also they were given away here and there and everywhere. One statesman referred to the national loss of these jewels, and he said in Parliament, "Oh, those jewels, the pride and glory of this realm, which have made it so far shining above all others. Would they were here, within the compass of these walls, to be viewed and seen by us, and to be examined in this place. This very name and memory have transported me." But the Chequers ring is one of very few surviving pieces of jewellery worn by Elizabeth I. It may have been presented by James I to Alexandra Home, the first Earl of Home, and then it descended through generations. But then he presented his house of Chequers to the nation, and it is now used as a country house for the Prime Ministers. The ring is still held in Chequers and has been loaned out a number of times and has been placed on public display. It's most probable that the Chequers ring is just one of a number of pieces of jewellery which have survived Elizabeth I, but these may be hidden inside of a number of collectors around England. There may also be jewels inside of the royal collection that date back to this time, but the Chequers ring is a mysterious piece of jewellery that possesses a question as to who the woman alongside Elizabeth I is. If it was Anne Boleyn, it could be one of the earliest images of Anne as Henry VIII went on the warpath, destroying all portraits of his executed second wife. Thank you for watching and to support. Please subscribe to Her Remarkable History. Thank you.